Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Running Tales. This is the podcast where we don't prepare properly at all because we were late back from work. My name's Craig Lewis, and yeah, everything's a little bit crazy around here. You can tell because I am wearing a buff from a rival podcast, from the Marmcast podcast. Go and check that out; it is fantastic. But I really should be wearing Running Tales merch like I am on my t-shirt. But there you go. We've had previous episodes from Andy Goldsby and Tim Stent from Marmcast, and they're both fabulous. So yeah, check their podcast out as well, and buy our merch. But yeah. Anyway, folks. Oh, you might also notice, I should say, that I have a cut on my nose. It looks like I've been fighting Anthony Joshua or something, but I'm not. I'm not Jake Paul. I actually managed to drop a heater on my head. That's another story for another day that maybe we'll go into. Anyway, enough of that rambling. Today we do have a wonderful guest, Stephanie Reents, who is the author of this book. We love to run. If you're on YouTube, you can see that. If you're on the podcast, you can't. But yeah, so go on YouTube as well as listening to us on the podcast. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get Stephanie to come in here and explain all about the book so we can get this torturous intro out the way. So, hi, Stephanie, how are you doing?
Hi, Craig. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, I know. Thank you so much for coming on and for sending your book my way. So we love to run. I'm not going to try and spiel about what it is. I have read it, but I wondered if you might be able to give just a quick intro as to what the book is and what it's about briefly.
Sure, yeah. So my book is a novel. It's set in the early 1990s at a small New England college. For those of you in England, that means we're talking about Massachusetts specifically. And it follows a women's college cross country team. It's a Division III program, so not the very best in the country, but nevertheless. This is a group of women who take running very seriously, and they think they really have a good shot at going to nationals that year. They came very close the year before. They've got all their top runners back. And if everything goes well, they'll go to nationals. But one of their very best runners, Kristen, comes back from summer vacation and something clearly has happened to her. She's behaving very, very erratically. She volunteers to lead the speed workouts, which is something that no one really wants to do on the team. She gets into a fight with one of her teammates. And by the end of the first section of the novel, she's entirely disappeared. So her behavior is really threatening to disrupt the really kind of delicate team dynamics that the team captain, Danielle, works very hard to create. So the novel is really about what's going to happen to this team. It's about what happened to Kristen, and it's about how you can maintain really close friendships with people who are also your competitors. And so that's what the novel is in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I want to ask you quickly. I mean, this isn't a running question to start off. I suppose it's more to do with the novel itself, but it's written in a reasonably, I'd say, unique way in terms of there isn't a single main protagonist. You have
Yeah.
individual chapters which look at things from the view of each of the runners you just mentioned, and also sometimes externally as if it's from another team member who you never quite know who they are. What made you do it in that manner?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so the novel has three perspectives. It's told from the team captain's perspective, Danielle's perspective. It's told from Kristen's perspective, and she's the runner who's having trouble. And it's told from the perspective of the team. So there's this weird we voice in
Yeah.
the novel. And I was attracted to the we voice because it seems to me that teams and groups have identities of their own, right? And they have identities that are sort of bigger than any particular individual. They come together and they have a voice and a personality. And so I wanted to be able to speak in the voice of the team, but also as I was writing that team perspective, I also began to realize that I could use it to also talk about individual characters who are not the main characters of the novel. So that we voice also has the ability not only to speak for the team, but to zoom in and tell us things about other runners on the team and they're generally things that probably the team would know, but maybe those runners would not like to offer up to the reader. So it was really exciting to do that. I mean, there are other novels that use that we voice. There's most famously a novel by Jeffrey Eugenides called The Virgin Suicides. And it's about a group of teenage boys who are obsessed with a group of teenage girls, a family of girls. And it's a bit of a dark book, but because those girls in that family, one by one, start committing suicide.
Right.
And it's about those boys watching what's happening to this family of girls. Yeah, so it was just like, it seems like, teams they have a kind of energy that is bigger than the sum of its parts, bigger than bigger than the individuals that are part of the team. And anyone who's been on a team knows this. Like sometimes a team will do things that no single member of the team would do,
Yeah.
for better and for worse.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's really interesting actually, because there is that. I'm not suggesting that the team, particularly in We Love to Run, has groupthink, but you can sometimes have groupthink as a team.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah. What does the team believe? And do the team's beliefs necessarily match up with the beliefs of all the individual runners? And that becomes a very important part of my novel as the team tries to figure out what's wrong with Kristen.
Hmm.
Do they have like a cohesive view of what's wrong with Kristen? Or does it start to splinter a little bit as individuals start to speculate that the team is maybe not right about what the team thinks is wrong with Kristen?
Yeah, and um, I want to get onto some of that in a little bit because
Yeah,
some of the conversations when we do start to find out what's wrong with Kristen, and it's kind of for listeners now, we're not going to go deep into that because it kind of gives away a lot about the book, and I don't want
right.
to do that. I want people to go away
Yeah,
and
yeah,
read
yeah,
it, but
totally.
part of it is around when they do find out what's wrong with her, they have very different opinions on exactly what happened to her as well.
Yeah,
So I want to talk about that in a bit, but I want to kind of concentrate initially on I suppose more purely the running side of things, because although running is sort of a vehicle for everything else, that
hmm,
there is a lot about running in it as well.
totally.
And I wonder, like, I mean, I think I'm just going to read a little bit. Hopefully, this won't embarrass you from the very start of the book because it will give people an idea of what I'm going to talk about, perhaps. So this is, folks, this is from the very intro to We Love to Run, and I'll probably read it really badly. So apologies for that, Stephanie. Okay. We hated a lot of things. A gradual hill in the second mile of a cross country race, two hard workouts in a row, the little packets of Lorna Doones in our brown bag lunches that assistant coach picked up from the college cafeteria, like vanilla chalk, big toenails that were a tad too long. When our coach said, "Here's where you make your move," inner thigh friction, holes in our socks. Our mothers, "Shouldn't you take off one day a week?" We hated our coaches. We hated them for encouraging us to have a love-hate relationship with our bodies, for telling us on some days that we were strong and on others that we were fat. And there's so much throughout the book about how I want to get into kind of the runners being classed as fat thing as well, but there's like this
Yeah.
love-hate thing runs throughout the entire novel, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I just feel like having a love-hate relationship to running is just part of being a runner, you
Yeah, yeah,
know?
yeah.
I mean, I feel like we can all relate to the dread that we feel before a hard workout or even before a race, right? Before the gun goes off, when you just have that absolute pit in your stomach about how much what follows is going to hurt. And then there's the fact that once you're actually in the middle of it, when it's going well, your mind kind of turns off, right? Your body takes over and your mind gets a little bit quieter
Mm.
and you do what you've been training to do for so long. And then, of course, there are also, unfortunately, those moments when things aren't going well and when your mind is very loud and saying, "This is really hard. Why am I doing this?" I put so much into, training for this particular race. and it's not paying off, right? So when I wanted to capture the kind of, I wanted to capture the love-hate relationship that I think many runners have with
Yeah.
running, which is that we're asking our bodies to do something that's very hard and that will be painful. But ideally that our minds kind of turn off when it is going really well. So there's that. I mean, I also wanted to write about the fact that like oftentimes when we're at our peak as runners, we're also on the knife's edge of getting sick or injured.
Yes.
And again, I think a lot of runners can just relate to that. Like you push your body to the absolute limit to get to this, like to get to a peak performance. And if it goes well, it goes beautifully well. But there's always the danger of getting sick or injured. And I don't know, I always felt like the thing about competing when I was competing was that it meant that I was often competing with an injury or with some
Yeah.
kinds of aches and pains, right? You would just like you would keep going until you absolutely had to stop. And that's just like that's hard on your body. But it's also like I think like very much what like runners get used to doing. So that was the other thing that I was trying to capture. And then I think like the third kind of part of like the love-hate relationship is just like when you're on a team, like when you're on a cross-country team, on the one hand, the team can do really well as a team. On the other hand, you can do really well as an individual. So that introduces like a degree of competition into cross country teams that I think is unique to cross country, as opposed to like other sports where you're like all working together. And on a cross country team, like you want, like on the one hand, you want to be the best, but you also want to be running with people who also want to be the best, right?
Yeah.
Because if they're running really well, then you're running better.
Yeah.
And that's tricky, because it means that at some point you're going to lose.
Mm.
And that's good and bad.
Yeah, and I think in the novel that manifests itself in quite a toxic way at some points within the team because of Kristen's personal issues, which means she's constantly battling with Chloe for the front position.
Yes.
And to some degree that's fine. It does make them start to go faster, and certainly
Mhm.
she performs very well for a time, but it's not really
Mhm.
sustainable because there's so much going on.
Totally, absolutely. Yeah. And I would just be curious about I do think it's true of many people's relationships with their closest friends and closest running partners that there can be a little bit of a back and forth.
Mm.
And especially when you're young and so much of your identity is like tied up in being like the best runner, the stakes get a little higher, right? And as you say, it becomes a kind of like it becomes a little bit toxic that intense competition. I think as we get older, we start to grow out of that and see that like on some days we're going to win and on some days we're going to lose, and that doesn't have to negatively impact the friendships we have with the people with whom we're training. And oftentimes the people you're training with are your best friends because you spend so much time
Yeah.
out on the road and on trails, you know,
Yeah.
putting in the miles.
And it's so much harder for the girls in We Love to Run, isn't it? Because they're not only having this battle to run, they're getting so much pressure from their coaches.
Yeah.
They have all these external things, and some of them are quite serious, as we mentioned, but others of them are just things that every sort of teenage girl might go through in terms of like question marks over boys, and in Harriet's case, girls,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
question and drinking or drinking too much. And
Yes.
actually, I don't think it talks a lot about study, but I'm sure that's something that's going on as well. So
Yeah.
they've got all
Yeah.
these things going on as well, these pressures on top, and equally at that point, they are running for an arts college called Frost, as you said, in New England. It's very competitive. I think you even mentioned the times they're doing at some point. They're pretty quick, but they're
Hmm.
not training for the Olympics or a top grade thing. So there's just a lot going on for these girls, isn't there?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, college is such a pressure cooker, right? Because
Mm.
you are, it's such like a moment where you're trying to figure out who you are. And the way we kind of set up college, I think in the United States and also in England is like, it's like this moment where you're supposed to be like growing up, right?
Yeah,
Coming into your own. And in fact, I don't think that really happens. I mean, I think like, you don't really do that until the end of your 20s. But yeah, these young women are not only runners, and I think that they have come into college probably with their strongest sense of identity is coming from running, but they're also at a really competitive college where
mm,
yeah, where they're taking classes and they're trying to figure out what they're going to do with their lives, and they're going to try to figure out who will they be when they stop being collegiate runners. And they also want to have fun, right? I really wanted to
yeah,
capture like some of the kind of like the social dimensions
yeah,
of being in college, where it's like, you go to parties and you sometimes drink too much or you drink too much all the time. And yet there's so many other people drinking too much. You may not be aware that you really have a drinking problem. Um, you're trying to figure out what your sexuality is. Do you like women or men?
yeah,
Do you want to have a serious boyfriend, or do you want to, just have a series of kind of like one night stands? I mean, there's so much that happens in that period, in those 4 years when most people are kind of like living more independently for the first time. And all of those things get in the way of running.
yeah.
It's like not great to be hungover, when you have to do a long run on a Sunday.
I still get that now, Stephanie.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, I remember that very, very clearly. Like, like lying on the grass on a Sunday and thinking like, oh my gosh, I gotta get my body going, and this is the last thing I want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And um, that I suppose becomes even worse when you've got coaches who are sort of calling you fat for being,
Yeah,
well, not even fat, but I think you said the phrase was
yeah,
something like, what it really means is not as lean as you might be,
yeah,
or
yeah,
whatever. And,
yeah,
and actually, somebody I was speaking to this weekend told me, when they're talking to professional runners, or runners who are trying to be professional, it's something like, if you weigh the right amount, you're fat. If you weigh just below it,
yeah.
you're okay. If you're a skeleton, you're just right, sort of thing. And you're like, oh God,
Right.
that can't be
Yeah.
actually right though, can it?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, well, so, most of this book is invented. People have asked me like, "Oh, are your characters based upon your teammates? What did they think about your novel?" And in
Yeah,
fact, all of the women in the book are really they are fictional characters. But the one thing that I did take from my college experience is that we did have a coach who my freshman year, I think it was after cross country and maybe at the beginning of the indoor track season, he weighed the whole women's and men's team. I think it was done publicly.
yeah,
He measured our body fat with calipers. So, all of those little flash skin tests
yeah,
at different places on your body. And he made a blanket statement. He said, he told the women's team that we all needed to lose 5 pounds. And Frost, Amherst, where the school I went to was not the kind of place where students liked being told what to do. And if they were going to be told what to do, there needed to be like a good explanation for why they
yeah,
needed to do it. So the consequence of this blanket lose 5 pounds was that half the women's indoor track team quit.
yeah. Oh, good for them,
And
really. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. And I think that a number of people have said to me, well, thank goodness that doesn't happen anymore. And I think maybe it happens less explicitly than it used to happen, but I do think that there are still ways that coaches, surveil their athletes' weights, that women themselves and men are paying attention to how much they weigh. And then when that kind of comes into, then that like gets exacerbated by the fact that I think in the West, still live in a culture where we like really idolize certain types of
Mm.
female bodies.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to, it's been interesting to me, like a number of people have said like, trigger warning, this book has so much disordered eating in it. And I never really thought about it as such. I mean, I do think that like that, Harriet is recovering from an eating disorder that she had in college. Chloe is certainly eating in strange ways. I mean,
Yeah.
she's not letting herself eat any fat. She's only eating the egg whites, but never the egg yolks. So the characters are certainly the characters are certainly demonstrating degrees of disordered eating. But I have to say that that was so true of my experience in college, just among the general population of female students. I mean, I came of age in like the low fat diet craze, and
Yeah.
like that meant that people were like living on like brown rice and vegetables that they took from the salad bar and then microwaved. And it was like a major treat if you let yourself eat like grape nuts with skim milk. That was dessert, you know. So I mean, I think that this is like, so I think that it continues to be, I've been reading like women's running memoirs. I just read Kara Goucher's book about her time at being coached by Salazar during the Oregon Project.
Yeah.
That's the early 2000s. So that's like a decade after my book is set in, even 2 decades. And Salazar is still saying to his female athletes, like he says to them, he weighs them and he says, "You're fat."
Mm.
And so we know that I mean, it is the case that being lean can make you faster,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's also the case that underfilling your body leads to injuries.
Yeah.
And so that's the I think the needle that needs to be carefully threaded when we think about healthy female bodies that are strong and fast, that they're well fueled, and that they're bodies that are not constantly getting stress fractures,
Mm.
showing all the signs of being undernourished.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we probably have got better as a society generally in
Yeah,
terms of running and athletics, in terms of your body needs to be fueled and having that
yeah,
conversation. But it's, as you say, I think it's far from perfect. And you look at the
yeah,
pressure of coaches on athletes, and you still see that all the time with
yeah,
men and probably women more. But so, you
yeah,
look at outside of well, within running, I suppose there's been a lot about Jakob Ingebrigtsen, who's one of the greatest runners around, and was put apparently under huge pressure by his father when being trained there. You talk about someone like Simone Biles and everything she had to put
yeah,
up with as a young athlete. There's lots of debate about the Williams sisters in tennis and so on, and the pressure that
yeah,
they got, and whether that
yeah,
pushed them to another level or was a
yeah,
bad thing. So that
yeah.
that sort of pressure still seems to happen, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I would just say that then like the pressure is even greater on women. Women's bodies are scrutinized much more than men's
Yeah.
bodies. And you're criticized for being too thin and you're criticized for being too fat. There is no happy medium. I think like when men, a runner was telling me, she's like, a guy on my team lost a lot of weight and he started running a lot faster. And I don't think his body, like I got the impression what she was saying was like, and people were like congratulating him on that, right? But like when women drop a certain amount of weight, again, like there's some women who are saying, and some people who say like, oh, good job. But then there's a whole nother group of people, including some of the women's own teammates, who might say like, you have an eating disorder, what's
Mm.
wrong with you? So I think it is always more complicated for women just because of the way that women's bodies have been like objectified for so long culturally.
Yeah.
And so that just makes things more complicated for women athletes.
Yeah, and like, as someone in the someone who's middle aged here, as a man, you can get away with a dad bod, and everyone says, "Oh, that's cool. Look at his dad bod" or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
don't
yeah.
really have the same for women, do you,
Yeah,
necessarily?
yeah, exactly. We need to start using the term mom bod.
Yeah. Well, there we go, folks. There we go. Running tales, people. Go
Yeah,
out there and start talking about
yeah, the
the
mom
glory of the
bod.
mum bod.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah. Um, the book also goes quite deep into sexual relationships between the girls on the team and men, and I don't think I'm giving too much away by saying there's quite a lot of conversations around consent,
Mhm.
and so on. I mean, this is, I suppose, moving away from running, but I think it's a very important part of the book and just a very important conversation generally. Was that
Yeah.
the main thing you wanted to talk about when you wrote the book?
I don't think it was the main thing that I wanted to talk about, but I was really interested in thinking about like how um, the kind of grit that people develop as runners is generally seen as such like a positive character trait.
Yeah,
And I largely believe like discipline and grit are really positive. They will take you so far in life. But I was kind of interested in like thinking about, well, what happens when someone who has a lot of grit and tenacity and discipline is hurt in some way by another person, where maybe having grit is not the right response, right? Sometimes like saying like I am strong, I'm going to just get through this is not the best way to deal with something bad that's happened to you. Sometimes you just need to feel something, right? Sometimes you can't power through things. And so that's like why I wanted to kind of why the book is not just about running and is
yeah,
not just about trauma. It's like I wanted to have it be about both things. And I guess and I also like I know for me that when I was a young runner in college, I felt so powerful and invincible. And it was so wonderful to feel that way. But then I had a few, I don't know, I was like mugged once when I was running on in a park in Costa Rica and nothing bad happened. My watch was stolen and the little money I had was stolen.
mm,
Um, but I very clearly remember thinking that if I'd known this guy was going to grab me, I could have run away from him.
yeah, yeah,
And first of all, that's who knows if that's true, but that shows like the extent to which I still believe that I was really like powerful and strong and fast. But the other thing that happened as a result of that was that in certain situations where like I was running on trails for a couple years afterwards, I would feel so scared, right? I would have, I would realize, I would remember what happened and I would have a sense of fear. And so, I mean, so part of the novel is certainly about like how sad it is that you can be such a strong, powerful, fast woman and have that taken away.
yeah, yeah,
And yeah, so that's that. And like and how shocking that is to be that young woman and to realize all your hard work will not save you.
mm. And
Um,
also I
yeah.
felt that then there was recriminations, you know, self
Yeah.
self-loathing. I don't know if that's too strong a
Oh
word,
yeah,
but
yeah, totally.
yeah,
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 absolutely.
like,
Yeah.
oh, I wasn't strong enough, I'm not good
Yeah,
enough, and it was
exactly.
blaming. I mean, almost a form of victim blaming when you're the victim.
Yeah. Right, exactly, exactly. Because you think about like as a run, like we're always blaming ourselves as runners. Like if something
Mm,
doesn't go well, right? Like, oh, it's because you didn't train hard enough. Like part of running, and I think part of like many kinds of like athletic performances are about control, about thinking that you can control what ultimately is not controllable, right?
yeah,
I mean, but training is all about like kind of creating, doing the workouts that will enable you to have a certain outcome in a race, right? And when you, and then the same goes for food, right? Like if you eat the right foods, you will have the right body. And then, like, what happens when you encounter something that's outside of your control? Well, you immediately try to control it because that has gotten you so far in running, right? And
Yeah.
that's why Kristen, after whatever happens to Kristen, like she comes back to school and she says to herself, if I'm the fastest runner on the team, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
And those are just like, I think that those are funny deals that people make with themselves. And I think particularly young people make that with themselves because it's like, because we want to believe we can control things. It
Mm.
like part of growing up is realizing that there's so much that's out of our control. It's so terrifying. But it also means you don't have to blame yourself for everything. Sometimes bad things just happen and it's not your fault. But I think when you're young, it's very appealing to believe you can control things.
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting actually around as a more general point, other
Yeah,
than focused on we love to run,
yeah,
around the idea of quite often people will use. I mean, this is a big thing about running is therapy, isn't there? And it's like, well,
yeah,
do you know what running can help, but equally, quite a lot of the time you can end up running away from your problems. It won't solve
yeah.
everything. It's a great thing to do. I mean, I listened to a podcast with a lady called Ali Bailey, who you may have heard of. She's probably a bit more well known over on this side of the
Yeah, yeah,
pond.
yeah.
She's an ultra runner. She's been an ultra runner for ages, a podcaster, fantastic runner. Um, but she was also an alcoholic to the point where she would be drinking like a bottle of wine halfway around an ultra or something like that.
Oh my gosh.
And she's written a
Yeah,
book about this, which I haven't actually got round to reading yet, but I'm
yeah,
definitely going to. But her thing was, I was running, I was doing this running, I was so strong when I was out running, but it
yeah.
wasn't solving any of my problems.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But yeah, but like it can feel like such a good way to solve problems, right?
Yeah.
Because you are doing something that's like healthy and that other people admire. And yet, it's not necessarily, going to lead you into the heart of what you need to address.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
I think that's totally true. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean the other thing I'll say just like is like the book is set in the early 90s and that felt important to me. Like that is like when like it's sort of like the forerunner to like the Me Too conversations. It's like I remember so clearly, and this again may feel less relevant to people in England, but listening to like the Clarence Thomas, Anita Hill hearings, that those happened in like October of 1991. And that's when, Clarence Thomas was about to become the first Black Supreme Court justice. And, a woman steps forward, Anita Hill, and says, like, he was sexually harassing me when I worked for him. And it's like, that it's like, how seriously was Congress going to take her allegations?
Mm.
And, how seriously, this is kind of like the early 90s. It's like a moment where like people are starting to understand, starting to view sexual assault differently, to understand that it's not about a kind of like a stranger jumping out of an alley
Yeah.
and attacking someone, that it happens between people who know each other. And so I definitely I wanted to like write about some of the kind of cultural changes that are starting to happen in the early 90s.
Yeah, and I suppose the power dynamic there is really interesting as well. I mean, you're talking about that kind of period. I suppose we're not too far away from, and I'm not suggesting because I don't fancy getting sued by him that he
Yeah,
that he was any in any way a sexual oh, I can't think of the right word, but a criminal or whatever. But you
yeah.
talk about the Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky thing,
Oh
where
yeah,
Clinton had
yeah,
huge amounts of
absolutely.
power, and yet
Right.
out of it, ultimately the villain was Monica
Yes.
Lewinsky for a lot of people. She
Yes,
was branded
exactly.
as being a slut. She was slut shamed or whatever, wasn't she, as a result
Yes,
of it?
exactly.
And actually, this guy's the president who's married, and
Yes.
it's like,
Yes,
what is going on here? Why are we?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like, yeah, like Anita Hill, Clarence Thomas, right? Monica Lewinsky, Bill Clinton, all of those are, it's interesting to look back on that from the
Mm.
perspective of the Me Too movement and to think how differently we view those situations. I myself, I remember thinking badly of Monica Lewinsky,
Yeah. Yeah.
or at the very least thinking like, well, if Bill Clinton was going to have an affair, why didn't he just choose someone who was, I don't know, more discreet? I mean, what a terrible thing of me to
Well,
think, but I did think that at the time, I
she
think
was
like, yeah,
also sorry. She was also criticized for like how she looked. Like, oh, she doesn't look
yeah,
good enough. She's not glamorous.
right.
She's not a blonde bimbo. Inverted
Yes,
commas. Why is he
exactly,
going? Why is he
exactly.
having an affair with her? Sort of thing.
Yes. Yeah,
Ridiculous.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think like certainly our like a number of people have said like, oh, it's a historical novel. Your novel's historical, like these things, we've moved beyond this. Someone said to me recently, but have we really moved beyond it? Certainly in the United States, we're back in a kind of like regressive moment, which I
Yeah.
think with the kind of the tone of the discourse is being set from the people who rule our country,
Mm.
um, and evidently we've decided that I don't know we're that we want to step back in time. I'll say that.
Yeah.
In
No,
what
I
comes to
think
like
with
how we think about relationships between men and women.
No, I think it's a direction of travel that they say like America sneezes and Britain catches a cold sort of thing, and it's sort of
Yeah,
that is starting to come into play here as well.
yeah,
So for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I want to because we've kind of spoken about some of the inverted commas negative things
Yeah, yeah,
in the novel, but actually it does have an overridingly positive message in the
yeah,
relationship that these girls, these runners have, and how much they pull together, and even when
yeah,
they're arguing, they
yeah, yeah,
always
yeah,
do what's right for each other in the
yeah,
end.
yeah, 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 absolutely. It felt really important to me that the novel end in a happier place. And in fact, in the first draft of the novel, I had a completely tragic ending with everything just ending in catastrophe, people getting injured in strange ways. And then I thought that cannot be the ending of this novel. So yeah, I wanted to show like I think what the novel is ultimately about. It's about the ways that this group of women become more honest with each other, and as a
Mm,
result of being more honest with each other, can have more meaningful friendships with each other, right? And
yeah,
so that felt important to me. Like they finally show themselves to each other, and that's a huge risk, right? Because like it's always a risk to show people your flaws, your pain,
mm,
your trauma. It's a risk because you think you're going to be judged, but they ultimately do that. And out of that, they are able to forge stronger friendships with each other. And
yeah,
so I think the message, I mean, I'm not sure that I believe in messages, but I really wanted I wanted to show something about the importance of like honesty, being your honest, authentic self with your friends,
yeah.
and like that is the way that friendships deepen.
Well,
And yeah,
so I was just say one of the bits I really liked. It's kind of a bit of a subplot, I suppose, but
yeah,
Chloe, I think it's fair to say, is a little bit out there from the rest of the group. She's a little bit out there
yeah,
generally, isn't she?
yeah,
And then
yeah,
there's
yeah,
this moment where she's talking to Danielle, the team captain, and she
yeah,
suddenly realised that she'd done this sort of strange birthday party for her, hadn't she?
yeah,
And
yeah,
Danielle always just thinks it's odd. It's Chloe. What?
yeah,
And it turns out that the reason Chloe did it was because she reveals suddenly in this moment that it's because of her huge admiration that she has for
yeah,
Danielle and she's always
yeah,
had. And it kind of is this moment where both of them just go, oh,
yeah, 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 exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Poor Chloe. Chloe just doesn't have great I don't know, social intelligence.
yeah,
But at the end of the novel, it's Chloe who really brings people together in the novel and
yeah.
tries to do something nice for her team. In the end, even if she does it in a kind of clueless way. So I wanted the team to, I wanted them to overcome their kind of interpersonal challenges. I wanted them to be honest with each other, and I wanted them to end up at the, after everything that's happened, to be friends with each
Yeah.
other, even if they're not like, they're still not perfect. They still argue. They're still snarky. But that is, I think, true to like humans and
Yeah.
friendships, that we bring our imperfect selves to our relationships with other people, and hopefully they still love us.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Just for the last few minutes, Sefri, I want to perhaps
Yeah,
concentrate and ask you a couple of questions about your own running, because as you've
yeah.
hinted at a couple of times, you were kind of in this place where you were a collegiate runner yourself and so
Yeah.
on. But I think if I'm correct from the kind of pre-chat we had, that was something which at the end of college you sort of left running behind and didn't find it again till a little bit later.
Yeah, well, I never stopped running, but I definitely stopped competing.
Right.
So I had been, I think that I first got into running around 19, like 82 or 83, when I was starting junior high. And it was solely because my father, who was a smoker, at some point started running
Right.
and in 70s and still smoked, but then eventually stopped smoking and ran a marathon around 1983, so pretty early. And running became like a really big part of his life. He wasn't a competitive runner and he didn't run vast distances, but he went to the YMCA every day and he ran with a group of guys, and it was a really important part of his life. And I ran my first 10K with my dad. He slowed down with me for the whole race, and then I outkicked him at the end, and he was really pissed.
Oh, we
Um,
see so many kids doing that at park run every week. I
yes,
love
yes,
it.
exactly. Yeah. Anyway, so once I started running, I loved it. And I was lucky enough. I went to Boise High. I went to a big public high school in Boise, Idaho, which was then about a town of or a city of about 100,000 people. But I ended up on a great cross country team in high school with a great coach, and I loved my team. And we went to state my junior year and won. And it was just like a fantastic, we just had such a great group of women. And I was pretty much hooked then, right? And I knew I was going to run in college. My whole identity was that of a runner. I fell apart when I got injured, as I did a couple of times in high school. I got stress fractures. But I loved running, right? And I was choosing between a Division 3 program like Frost
Yeah.
and Division 1, and I ultimately chose Division 3. I thought I would probably have a more like kind of balanced college experience. I was also really academically focused. But I ended up at a school with the worst cross country program.
Right.
We rarely had 7 women out on the course at the same time. So we didn't really compete as a team. It was a major disappointment to me. And I think in part, maybe that's why I didn't continue competing after college. But I continued to run. I ran, some of my just craziest memories are like running around New York City. I lived in New York in my 20s. I would take my running kit to work and I would run from work to the Upper West Side where a guy I was dating lived. So that was like a 6 mile run. Um, I dragged one of my brother's friends who was like a really good runner out on like a 20 miler where we like ran from the bottom of Manhattan up to Central Park, did 2 laps of Central Park. He was just like dead. But anyway, but this culminated in I was training for the New York Marathon, and I ran it. So that was in when I was 27. So again, a long time ago. And seated myself with a fake fast time. So I started up near the front and ended up running. I ran a 3:13 marathon, totally bonked at the end, probably didn't know anything about fueling,
Yeah.
but ended up in the top 100,
Oh wow.
which was so fun. But then I
Yeah.
was like, then I never ran another marathon. It was crazy. I could have run Boston, but I didn't for some reason. So it was, it's just interesting. Running kept being such an important part of my life, and I kept doing crazy runs on occasion, as well as just like going out and, just regularly running,
Mm.
3 or 6 miles, but never competing again. Now that I'm like in my 50s and with a torn meniscus and a lot of aches and pains, and I haven't run much at all in the last 4 years. I regret it. I think like, well, what could I have done if I had like stuck with it,
Mm.
and really trained in a more serious way in my 20s. I guess it's the kind of like the woulda, coulda, shouldas of aging. Once you lose something, you like think to yourself like, why did I take that for granted?
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
suppose there's kind of the two sides of it, and maybe I say this more because I've never been very good, so I'm never going to get the top 100 of a race like New
Yeah.
York or whatever. But
Yeah.
I suppose by you know doing less of the competitive stuff and doing more of just getting out there and loving running, you've
Yeah.
got that side
Yeah.
of it instead. And yeah,
Totally. And that's a great point that you make, Craig, because but like 5 years ago, my husband and I decided that we would run every day. It was the pandemic, and so we would run
yeah,
every day at the end of the day, and we would run 3 miles. There was a track near our house, and our kid at that point was like 5, so we would like let him play in the playground, and we would just run around this track. And it was so great. It was such
mm,
a great ritual to end our days with a 2 or 3 mile run. And honestly, at that point, I was like, if I can just run 2 or 3 miles, 4 or 5 times a week for the rest of my life, I'll be happy. And then I got injured. So now I'm wondering if I can like get back to that and without affecting my ability to like walk. That's now the kind of
oh,
the
that's really interesting because we
yeah,
do. So my wife and I we have a little running club, a very little running club, like literally
yeah,
maybe 10, 15 members or whatever.
yeah,
And a lot of the runners we have, which actually are mainly women. I'm not sure whether that's pertinent or not, but a
yeah,
lot of them are kind of my age, a bit older, a bit younger, but
yeah,
going through that injury phase, and a lot of them are sort of at that phase of like a couple have been told you really shouldn't be running anymore, and they're like, yeah, but
yeah,
I'm not giving it up, and I'm going to and
right,
we're just sort of helping them to continue running at some
yeah,
at some level, and they sort of love it and they keep going. And
yeah.
I think it's really kind of important
Well,
to
yeah,
have that.
I'd love to get your advice about how I do that.
Oh, well, speak to Michelle, my wife.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
She's a proper run coach.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm just the joker who blows the whistle.
Yeah, yeah. That's great. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, I think we all know like how addictive running is. It's like once a runner, always a runner. It's
Yeah,
really hard to replace the efficiency and elegance and simplicity of running with any other exercise.
yeah.
That's been my struggle.
I suppose the only thing that I'd say that to anybody or whatever in that sort of scenario
Yeah.
is like it's almost like when you're beginning as well. I suppose it's like don't be worried about how inverted commas slow you might be, or how you're not hitting what you
Yes.
used to be, or being competitive. Just get
Yes.
out there and do it. And if what your body is capable now is running, I don't
Yeah.
know, a 14, 15-minute mile, just do it and just enjoy it because it
I think
doesn't matter.
that's such good advice because there's some vain part of me that is still like, I look at the numbers and I just think like, oh my gosh, that's so slow.
Yeah.
But you're right. If I got a lot more comfortable with a 12-minute mile, I could probably do it. But I'm still
Mm.
like, I mean, I'm still like, oh, what? I can't even run a 10-minute mile. I'm still like critical of that.
Yeah.
But, I ran the other day, like 10 days ago, I said to my husband, like, let's go out on a run. and and we ran slowly. I slowed down because I was with him, and it felt great. It's like so I think slowing down is key. Just realizing that that is like part of the deal at this point.
No, it's really interesting. I mean, we had a lady called Sarah Lavender Smith on Running Tales recently, and
Yeah,
and she's on Substack as well. So you may have
I
looked
I
at some
love
of this.
her. I
Yeah,
follow her on Substack. Yeah,
but
and
one
I
of her, yeah,
yeah,
one of her biggest things, isn't it, that she talks about, even though she's still a phenomenal runner. I mean, she's done hard rock this year for
she's
yeah,
amazing.
but she talks about how frustrating it is that she's not as fast as she used to be, and how she's getting
Yeah.
used to running and hiking on runs and so on. And that's someone who's a brilliant, brilliant runner. So I think if Sarah can struggle with that
I
but also do it, then probably we all can.
I mean, Sarah Lavender Smith is in a totally different universe from me
And
because
me,
yeah, right, because she's doing 50-mile races or
yeah,
25-mile races. I mean, she is an incredible athlete. I have so much admiration for her, and she's a fantastic writer too.
yeah.
So I encourage everyone to follow Sarah Lavender Smith. I love her. I love her Substack.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. No,
Yeah.
no, she's really, really good. And obviously I'm gonna plug the previous episode of Running Tales with her, so folks go and listen to
Oh,
that
yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
yeah. Oh, cool. I can't wait to listen to that.
Yeah. Stephanie, I just want to round up now by asking one last question. Let's go back to We Love to Run. Where can people go and find We Love to Run and read it themselves
Yeah.
and find out about this story?
Yeah, yeah. So it's available. It might be hard for people to get in England, but it's available on Amazon. So if you can order from Amazon, you should be able to get it through Amazon. You might be able to even ask a local bookstore to order it for you. I don't think it hasn't been published in England, so it would have to come from the United States. But it was published with Penguin Random House, so it's a big press and any place you can get American books from that publishing house. It's also available as an audio book and as an ebook, and that might be an easier way to get it.
Yeah, definitely. And
Yeah,
we have,
yeah,
I know we have quite a few American listeners as well. So I guess they can definitely
yeah.
pick it up on Amazon and in bookstores
Yeah,
as well.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you're an American lister, you can get it at any bookstore, and your public library may also have it. So, I'm a huge supporter of public libraries, and so, get it in whatever way makes the most sense for you.
Fabulous. Stephanie, thank you so much
Thank
for
you so
talking
much. It
to us
was
about.
so fun to talk to you, Craig. And I'm excited to spend more time with your interviews and your Substack and to hear more about your running adventures.
Oh, thank you so much. No, I really
Yeah.
appreciate that. And yeah, thank you for your time. Thank you for allowing me to have a read of We Love to Run.
Yeah. Thank you.
Folks, if do please check We Love to Run out. It really is really really good. Have a listen back to some of the other episodes we've mentioned on Running Tales today. Do the like subscribe thing. I always mention that. Sometimes people do. Most of the time it goes over people's heads. But yeah, check that out if you can. Check out our Substack, runningtales.substack.com. And most importantly, please come along and join us next week and on the Running Tales podcast. And thank you once again to Stephanie for being a wonderful guest today.
Thank you.